Good evening, everyone out there. This is Cathexis, and once again, I have Quantum Eraser on this evening, and we're going to do just a little recap of the work that he's been showing us in his presentations over the past 4 weeks, actually 5 weeks. And hope everybody had a good holiday. We took the time off. I was with some family, and everybody tends to be so. I appreciate your patience in waiting for the next installment. So we're going to, like I said, it's going to be like a recap episode. And it's not going to be a very long presentation. So I think, and then of course afterwards we're going to talk about our worldviews, and we'll go on into that very soon. But in the meantime, how are you doing today, John?
Good. I forgot to unmute myself again. I'm having a problem with it today.
We all do. It happens to everybody. But that's good. That's good. Did you have a good holiday, brother?
Yeah, it was really relaxing.
Nice, nice. Well, great. We've got you presented right now. I think without further ado, we'll just get right into it, and I'm sure it'll give us some good conversation afterwards.
All right, sir. Yes. What we wanted to do was just go ahead and just pull a few things out of the previous videos as a recap. And that was science, the atheism presentation, information, and quantum mechanics. So we're not going to go over everything in those presentations, obviously, because there were a couple of those were kind of long. But I wanted to pull out a few things that stand out and maybe make some of the things a little bit more clear.
All right.
So, great. Okay. So this is from Michael Crichton. He had a testimony before the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works in 2005. Science is nothing more than a method of inquiry. The method says an assertion is valid and merits universal acceptance only if it can be independently verified. The impersonal rigor of the method, it is utterly apolitical. A truth in science is verifiable whether you're black or white, male or female, old or young. It's verifiable whether you like the results of the study or you don't. So, as I said, science is nothing more than a method of inquiry. And that's what I was saying before in my presentation. Well, what's the method? Well, it's the scientific method. The scientific method, it's singular. There's one method. And it requires that a hypothesis be ruled out or modified if its predictions are clearly and repeatedly incompatible with experimental tests. Furthermore, no matter how elegant a theory is, its predictions must agree with experimental results if we are to believe that it is a valid description of nature. In physics, as in every experimental science, experiment is supreme, and experimental verification of hypothetical predictions is absolutely necessary. This is what I want to concentrate on up here. See, the scientific method requires that a hypothesis. Well, that means you kind of have to have a hypothesis first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the scientific method is hypothesis driven. One makes an educated guess to explain a what? Cause and effect relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Again, from low, C, becoming a successful scientist. For science discovery from Cambridge. So, a scientific hypothesis is based on cause and effect reasoning. A scientific hypothesis does not merely state X and Y may be related, but explains why they are related. That's very important. Why? How can a method solely designed to elucidate cause and effect questions, those are the hows and the whys, be used for what is questions? It doesn't make any sense. they can't fit inside it. It's out of context. It's out of the universal galactic vicinity of it. So, is the Earth a sphere? Why and how? That doesn't make any sense. Where is the X? And why or how is it related to Y? Essentially, this is what you're doing. You're subjugating, obfuscating the scientific method. This is your question. Does that make any sense? Why is a bread box rectangular, true or false? It's preposterous. That's how ridiculous this is. Okay. One last item for some pondering. Let me float this out there to you. Science is science because it can predict, right? That's what we hear. That's what we've always heard, always been told. So let's take a look at this. So after observing heat flow from hot to cold a few billion times without fail, I mean, you don't have to do anything. You can just watch it or put your hand on your coffee cup. And this is the second law of thermodynamics, the laws of entropy. You scientifically predict, then we genuflect, that if I set my scalding hot cup of coffee on a table for 20 minutes and it gets cooler, right? Everyone knows this. But you predicted that. Well, wow. Thanks, Captain Obvious. I couldn't come to that conclusion on my own. I needed a scientist. A complete idiot at the beginning of time could have predicted the same in a coma, correct?
Yeah.
Is predicting that my scalding hot cup of coffee will get cooler after 20 minutes a scientific prediction? Is that what it is? I'll leave that with you to marinate for about 2 seconds. It's not. So this has some ramifications here. There's an implicit message with this. Let's see if anyone comments on it. So for atheists and agnostics, at this point, based on our knowledge of information, the previous presentations that we went into excruciating detail on concerning genetics, biochemistry, and quantum mechanics, your positions are somewhat precarious in this sense. So you have three conclusions as to how this sentence and the meaning thereof, that is the software, that is information, poofed into existence. Here's your three choices. Either, number one, the display pixels conspired with my keyboard. That's the atheist materialist position. An intelligent agent is responsible, and that's a theist. Of course, we're going on a sliding scale because I did it. And number three, you just don't have enough information to make the call. You really don't know what constructed this sentence and the meaning or the information thereof. You just don't know. It could be the display pixels. It could be something else. So what's your choice? Quantum mechanics. According to Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, Max Born, described by Erwin Schrödinger, then validated repeatedly via thousands of experiments without exception for the past 100 years with the most successful branch of physics in the history of actual science, quantum mechanics, independent of the knowledge of the which path information or of it existing, particles have no defined properties or location. That is, photons, all your elementary particles, atoms, molecules. They exist in a state of a wave function, which is a series of potentialities rather than actual objects. That is, matter doesn't exist as a wave of energy prior to observation, but as a wave of potentialities. What I'm saying here is, you can't take a wave function and then try to figure out what the wavelength and frequency of the wave function is. That's what I'm trying to say here. Wave functions aren't waves like classical peaks and troughs, like water waves. There are potentialities. That is, their probabilities. They have no mass energy. To put it another way, the wave of a wave function is not a wave in physical space. It's merely an abstract mathematical construct. That's all it is. Therefore, in order for matter to exist, there must be a knower first. I know I must have said this about, I don't know, 85 times in the past couple of weeks. I'm trying to get it through to you. So what does this mean? Well, allow me to introduce you to him. He's the creator. If you haven't had the honor, his name's Jesus Christ. In other words, the Word. That equals the Logos. That means information, knowledge, logic, or reason. Boy, where did we hear that before? Sounds a lot like knowledge of the which path information could file right in this category, couldn't it? So I just want to let you know that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. You can either email me or Cathexis or leave a message below in the video. Okay, last topic. We haven't talked about this before, but I felt it's time to go ahead and put this out. I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's put an end to this discussion over whether the Earth is a spinning ball or a stationary flat Earth. Let's go ahead and put that to bed right now. Number one, you can't tell via the scientific method either of these. And we already went over the reasons why. It's a what, these are what is questions, right? However, the scientific method isn't the only method employed to reach truth. There's another method. It's called logic. And you can use established scientific principles and combine that with logic to come up with irrefutable claims. And I'm going to show you one right now. So, for the Coriolis effect to exist, you must have, that is, the necessary conditions. Number one, two differing frames of reference, one rotating coordinate system, that's the Earth, and one non-rotating coordinate system. That's the atmosphere and anything in it. This is from Segar. I think that's how you say his name. Segar Douglas. Introduction to Ocean Sciences, the second edition, Critical Concept Reminders. This is a university level textbook right here. The Coriolis effect. Listen closely. When set in motion, freely moving objects, including air and water masses, that's atmosphere and clouds, for example, move in straight paths while the Earth continues to rotate independently. Because freely moving objects are not carried with the Earth as it rotates. They are subject to an apparent deflection. Very important to recognize what apparent means. They are subject to an apparent deflection called the Coriolis effect. To an observer rotating with the Earth, freely moving objects that travel in a straight line appear to travel in a curved path on the Earth. Appear to. They're not. They're not curving. They're only curving based on your position on the rotating frame of reference. If somebody was hovering above that rotating reference, that object's going straight if you throw it that direction. That's very important to understand. Number two, the object in question, not physically attached to the rotating coordinate system, appears to deflect. Like I was saying, it moves independently of the rotating coordinate system from the vantage point anywhere on the rotating coordinate system, aka the Coriolis effect. That's what makes the Coriolis effect be the Coriolis effect. So, my argument is, or isn't, the Coriolis effect. My argument is the necessary conditions for the Coriolis effect to exist. And then a logical consistency argument on top of that. Here it is. If the Coriolis effect exists, then a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles nonstop, traveling at 500 miles per hour, with both locations roughly on the 35th degree north latitude, that is, both allegedly spinning at 860 miles per hour. That flight should be 1.5 hours. But it's not. It's 5.5 hours. The Charlotte to LA flight, the airspeed is 500 miles an hour, but the ground, what you have to do with the ground speed, you have to add the ground speed or the airspeed to the ground speed that's coming towards you. It's moving from west to east. You're flying from Charlotte to LA. So that speed is 860 miles an hour, and it has to be added to your airspeed. So that's 1,360 miles an hour. So in my example, we have two different frames of reference, the Earth and the atmosphere and everything in it. That's the Coriolis effect. The plane in the atmosphere is freely moving. It's not attached to the rotating coordinate system, and it's flying in a straight path. Based on the law of non-contradiction, each the Coriolis effect and the Charlotte flight either are both true or both false. Can't be any other way. The Charlotte to LA flight, traveling at 500 miles an hour in 1.5 hours, is false. Therefore, the Coriolis effect is false. Period. End of story. In conclusion, the Earth is not spinning. Therefore, the ball goes by way of the dodo bird, or you're a stationary ball geocentrist. That's your two choices. Voila. Have a nice day. Thank you for your ear.
Yeah, this topic is hotly debated, and when I first heard the argument, almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half, of the airplanes, going east to west and vice versa, I actually thought it was a terrible proof. I'll be honest with you. I thought, no, that's not how it works. The atmosphere moves with the Earth. That was my heliocentric programmed response. It absolutely was. I was like, oh, it's not a really good way to explain it. But the more I dig into this, and the more I understand about what they claim is true concerning with the Coriolis effect, what happens to bullets, apparently, what happens to cannonballs, all of these things, and then if that were true, then it absolutely would be happening to planes. It would affect planes and helicopters. It would affect these things.
Well,
Hell, if Foucault's pendulum is true, sorry, John, if Foucault's pendulum is true, it would be affecting planes. It's just one of those.
It doesn't affect bullets or rounds because I have some experience in that. Being retired military, I spent probably years on ranges. Mm-hmm. If you consolidated the amount of time I spent on ranges, and let me tell you something. And all my buddies were snipers. We had a sniper platoon right down the hall from me. So, and we'd cross train every quarter. So, and I never thought about it. See, back then, I wasn't thinking about that.
Nobody is when they go through that kind of stuff.
But I personally made shots at 1,500 meters with those guys spotting for me. The subject was never brought up.
Yeah.
Never. I didn't make any corrections whatsoever, except for elevation.
It seems like
and the wind speed.
Because we hear that snipers take into account. And I've seen a couple. Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos that explain it in an academic way, and you've got guys like Negators in the Army who says that it's in the manuals.
Wait a second. Okay, let's stop right there.
Well,
let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about field manuals. They could put where Jimmy Hoffa is buried in a field manual, and he's safe. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah.
The only time that I personally, let me just speak for myself. The only time that I ever got into a field manual is for my boards. That's the E5 and E6 board. That's the only time ever.
Gotcha.
And we used to get, where I was stationed, we used to get intel briefings from G2. They would come down because where I was at, they would get, and the time I was at, they would get defectors from Germany and from Russia. And they would always brief us. And you know what they told us?
Hmm.
They said those darn Americans, they were so hard to train for because why?
They never read their manuals.
Follow their manuals.
But it seems to be there in an academic sense.
Exactly.
And it like I've seen it the way that through my research, I've noticed that it's just an academic footnote of, oh, hey, guess what? If the Earth's spinning, this has to be happening. You know what I mean? Like it seems to be almost a footnote on the whole thing, and they use it as some type of evidence or proof for the spin of the Earth,
Right.
which we know. And if you don't know, if a person doesn't know, that they need to continue to look at this subject because there is no scientifically validated explanation as to or any evidence of the spin of the Earth. It's actually been more proof with Michelson, Morley, and Sagnac.
Well,
the spin is not there.
No, we don't need them. We don't even need those experiments. This is it. We don't need that. We don't.
No, I understand. No, I understand completely. Yeah, this right here is pretty solid.
Yeah, it's over. You cannot attack it. It's indisputable. It's indisputable. It's almost. I'll tell you what. I would put never. I wouldn't put anything up close to the delayed Joyce quantum eraser for its depth. However, this one's not that far away.
No,
this
I
can't
hear
be
you,
refuted.
Yeah, and they try to squirm around it and come up with all these different, possibilities of what. Well, wait, no. The planes aren't affected because they're powered. They have engines, and it's only the bullets that do because they squibble and miss the whole point the entire time.
Whoa! They bring up an argument that the planes have engines. What does it? If you brought up the color of the wings, it would be more relevant.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that they always do that. They point out like a helicopter. A helicopter is flying up into the atmosphere, and with the definition that you have just read off from that textbook, it would. I mean, what is it rotating along with the Earth within the atmosphere? No, it's not.
No.
So
anything not physically attached to the Earth is freely moving. That's the definition of it. If it wasn't freely moving, it would be constrained.
Yeah.
How can a baseball, an airplane, a helicopter be freely moving and constrained at the same time? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
But this is one that people have got to get their head around. It's not, so I mean you explain it very well, but at the same time, this is, I mean, we are questioning people's paradigms at a deep level. We're saying that, hey, guess what? I don't think the Earth is spinning. And there is other literal, actual scientific experiments that point to this, Michelson, Morley, and Sagnac. But it's something that we all kind of have to go down a path to learn for ourselves. It's not in the mainstream. They don't want it in the mainstream. It busts up their entire paradigm. That's the reason why Einstein came up with his nonsense, throw the ether out. And he was responding to Michelson Morley. He even said there is no optical experiment on this Earth that can demonstrate the spin of the rotation of the Earth. That's a quote from Einstein directly.
This is my experience. I found, and this is a very short experience, like I said, because I just came into this genre recently. Professionals, because I've challenged some meteorologists for things on the vacuum of space and a couple with the Coriolis effect, they have never thought about it.
Mm-hmm. That's when you're educated with foregone conclusions, and
there's never even a question.
Yeah,
They're not even aware of the question. It never comes up to them.
Exactly.
Listen, I made so many flights over the pond, as they say, in the military. Listen, I got the window seat every time. That's all I did was look out there. I never thought one time to think about, okay, is the Earth a sphere or is it flat? Does the Coriolis effect exist or it doesn't? No, I was just looking out, checking it out, man. Looking at Iceland down there at 40,000 feet below me. Right? I never thought about it. Right? There was more important things to do.
And that's the thing. It's about, and that's something that I came into with a certain mind frame coming into all these topics. Is what okay? What do we don't know that we don't know?
Yeah, right.
You know, that right there is where those questions lie. Those questions of, well, if the Coriolis effect is this, then why doesn't this or this? Because in our mind, the way that we are raised and indoctrinated and educated into this particular system, we are given the spin of the earth and the sphericity of it at an age before critical thought can really be applied.
Okay,
It's something that's
I got a perfect example of this. Uh, the professor of physics that I was talking to, he's a graduate level quantum physics professor, and he's also an expert in the laws of thermodynamics. Right. At the end of our 2-hour discussion, before he was ready to go, I said, "Hey, wait a second, I got one more question for you." I said, "How can you have a vacuum attached to a non-vacuum in the same system simultaneously?" There was silence for about 10 seconds. And then he said, I'm going to have to get back with you on that. That tells you right there. He's never thought about it.
And that's the thing. That's one of those questions that lies in what you don't know, you don't know.
I wasn't trying, it wasn't like a gotcha question or anything, because we had a great conversation for about 2 hours. It was just something that hit me because he had mentioned about something about thermodynamics, and I said, I made a mental note, and about an hour later, I said, oh yeah, before you go, because he was going, I said, and I just asked him the question, just I thought that he'd give me just a straight answer because he's an expert in it. I mean, this is one of those rubber ducky questions. When he hesitated, when I heard that silence, I said, it's over. Of course, I already knew that, but just for our point, they're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not a subject on their docket.
And the reason why is, like I said, through our education process, we're shown globes all over television. We're shown globes, usually kindergarten, first grade. We are just told that this is what it is. So everybody's at that point working on a foregone conclusion. Nobody's, when you're a child at that age, you're not questioning authority at this high level. And when you do get to the age of reason, or usually into your teenage years, and you do start taking earth science or whatever, it is
I don't
such.
know, hey, dude, I don't know if you could categorize as teenage years age of reason. Not for me, you can't.
No, age of reason is usually considered 8 to 13, and then adolescence begins. I mean, that's when you're thinking about your world critically, but you still don't have the faculties to be able to do it extensively. That's what I mean. They're giving us these presuppositions, these ideas as unquestionable in an age that we can't think critically about it ourselves. So by the time we do get to the point where we can critically think about it, what's happened? They are foregone conclusions. It forces you into a way of thinking where questions like this Coriolis thing won't come up. Questions about the vacuum adjacent to the vacuum, non-vacuum, they don't come up because smarter men have figured it out. Science says you get this nonsense all throughout. Just
right. I'd like to see those vocal cords.
Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious. But the problem is we have been programmed this particular way.
Yeah, that's true.
And what's been happening over the past 2 years, and the reason why I support these ideas and support even the flat Earth, the reason I still don't have any idea what it is. I believe that there is enough information from the scientific community to believe that it's a sphere. There's enough information where I could believe that it's a sphere. They've told me this. Here's the information. But at the end of the day, it is a belief system because what I experience outside is flat and motionless. and the sun, moon, and stars move overhead.
That's
Now,
a good way to put it. But remember, the scientific community, for one, they're not scientists. Number two, can you give me the address? Because
yeah,
I want to mail them. I have a few questions and comments.
yeah, I want to talk to science. I want to get them in a room and talk to the man. But the thing, though, is that I give way to these possibilities because you are
Sure.
right. In a large regard, it is outside of the purview of the scientific method.
It is, whether it's flat or a sphere, it is.
And
The only way you can know is to get far enough away and look.
which I don't think NASA can even do personally.
No.
There's enough evidence to lead me to believe that they can't get more than 400 miles up, and that's what the whole conspiracy is. They couldn't get that high up, and they're like, "Shit, I guess we got to fake everything." But for me, I think that this topic is one of the most important things a person can ask themselves. Question your own belief. Question the authority structure, even if it is within the scientific institutions. It is the reason why I have decided to do this show and to present the information you have and to do these presentations is because the scientific institutions, I've discovered in the past couple of years, there's a ton of dogma, agenda, greed, and influence that has crept in. And most people have this weird idea that the scientific institutions are, they're self-correcting always, and we should trust them implicitly.
Well, wait a second. You said self-correcting. That implies that they weren't correct to begin with.
Oh, for sure.
See the problem?
Well, for sure. But that's what you'll hear a scientism believer say. Well, we may not know everything, but that's the point. So if new information comes along, then we'll change our views, and that's the way science works. Which is, it sounds.
If it was empirical, the way what the scientific method should be, then there is no incorrect. Because if it followed the scientific method, you have done experiments validating it.
Absolutely.
The only way it could be incorrect if it's the actual experimental design that was compromised.
Well, remember the good old quote from Einstein: "If the theory don't fit the facts, change of facts."
I didn't know he said that, but he
yes,
said
sir. Yes, sir. And so I'm right there with you on this, is that the institutions of science have been corrupted in a large regard, and most people are blind to this. We are heretics. This is the problem. This is why scientism is a problem for me, because by just questioning the institutions of science to ask where real proof is within these particular topics, we are modern day heretics.
Well, here's another problem. When you're saying the institutions of science, are they scientists to begin with?
Well, a scientist is just a man who does science, but by using the scientific method. But you're right.
Exactly.
You're right.
Are they following the scientific method? Then they're scientific institutions. Now, here's another important point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between scientific claims and claims that alleged scientists make. Big difference there. Remember that one. Because I don't really care. I don't really care if somebody's making a claim. Go ahead and make your claim. I want to see the experiment. I want you to go through the scientific method. It's real easy. I do it with my daughter because she's in 8th grade. She was going through her science class, and I said she was having a little difficulty with it. I said, well, let's just go through it. Just walk me through each of the steps. That was it. Once I did it once or twice, you go, oh, I got it. That's too easy. Because it is. It's so simple. So those are some things
well, these are the things that we're trying to clear up. In my opinion, this is the whole intention of doing the show with you, is that, people could take issue all day long with you for whatever reason. Same with me. But at the end of the day, you're not wrong. The information you have presented over the course of the past 5 weeks is all verifiable, and it is absolutely consistent amongst what the real scientific community is, which is,
Yeah.
again, this is something you cannot say is not true. So they can hate us all they want, they can talk trash, they can call you all these names, but at the end of the day, you're not wrong,
It goes
and they're
back
going
up
to
to
have to
this.
deal with that.
It goes back up to this. The impersonal rigor of the method means it's utterly apolitical. A truth in science is verifiable whether you're black or white, male or female, old or young. It's verifiable whether you like it or you don't.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah, and that's what I think is so important about this, because we need to be reminded, apparently in the West, what the scientific method is, what
yep.
the scientific institutions really are, and expose what has happened. In a future episode, I'm going to go through and point out some of the largest and most impactful frauds that we've seen within the institution, which at one point has been demonstrated as actual real science, where during the time frames that these things occurred, the population at the time treated it as if it were real. If you look back historically on what we think is true or not, look back at science with the lens of history, you'll find that we've been wrong about 90% of most things.
Yeah, because
Like,
they weren't validated by experiment. That's why.
absolutely, it's theorizing and theorizing, and
Yeah.
I'm meaning in the colloquial sense. Like, that's the thing. Just as you just mentioned, there's a difference between what a scientist proves and what a scientist postulates on, basically. And I think people get this mixed up. So we're gonna keep this going. Next, future shows, we're gonna be talking about cosmology and the cosmic microwave background. I've been wanting to get into that for a while now, but I do want to move just quickly into something you touched on towards the end of your presentation. And I want to give everybody a huge disclaimer here. The entire intention of this show has been to demonstrate what real science is, what uh, what scientism is, and how to make the distinction between the two, and to understand that one is repeatable and testable and verifiable, and another one is belief systems centered around what you think the scientific community is telling
Yeah,
you.
that's pretty good. Yeah.
And so within that, though, the conclusions that you have come to, the conclusions that I have come to, it cannot be avoided that our worldview will be demonstrated. That if the facts are the facts, then there's no way around it. I'm not going to change the facts like like Einstein likes to do. But what you've pointed out in the past 4 shows of the quantum mechanics, especially, but the information in particular,
Right.
that presentation, it speaks volumes about what this existence is. And we do have a modern materialist understanding of this world, and that's where the atheists draw their philosophical guidelines from, and they've changed it here and there, and they've squirmed out of this and squirmed out of that, but atomism into materialism, all of this, you can see a chain of philosophical understandings over the past 1,000 years, and our modern society is firmly in materialism. But
Oh,
materialism, as we've proven in the first episode, is debunked
yeah.
by
You can't.
quantum mechanics
Yeah,
alone.
yeah. That's its huckleberry. You can't get around it. It's over.
And so they're only left with the possibility of idealism, or they have other variations of it and whatnot. There's double aspect idealism, and I'm actually going to get into this stuff in a further show. I'm putting together a presentation on the cognitive science, the cognitive philosophy behind materialism, idealism, physicalism, all of these things, because you have to know. People walk through life and they never question their philosophy for the most part, which, if you understand your axioms, and your philosophy, which flows from those axioms, you can have great success and happiness, and you could set yourself up properly. And it all comes from your philosophical standpoint. So if
Well,
you're accepting materialism, mhm,
I thought you said I thought you were going to say you set yourself free.
well, you do in a large regard, though, too, if you choose the right axioms. That's what's so amazing about it. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to materialism, though, if you are behaving with a faulty premise, if you are operating out of the wrong axioms about the nature of our reality,
Yeah.
well, then there's going to be nothing but distortions from that point up. You might be able to get
Yeah.
so far with it, but there will be distortions.
Yeah, because you're
So,
moving away from point zero. You're extrapolating off a fallacy. So everything downstream is fallacious.
yeah, and it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
So for the materialist, for the physicalist, for the rational materialist, oh, the atheist skeptic, they need to take a long, hard look at themselves, especially if they sat through and watched what we've just presented over the past month, because the implications are staggering. And personally, I'm still trying to assimilate this. I've been leaning towards this way of idealism for a long time, understanding that which is essentially showing that this place is a creation, it is a construct, and we have been created on this creation to do something. And this is what modern science has been trying to decimate. They've been trying to remove that, well, at least for the past 400 years, or you could say 280 years.
Not science.
It's
Not, not, not.
excuse me. I meant the men of science in the scientific institutions. It becomes a euphemism after a while. It's frustrating, I know, but thank you for calling me out on it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you can see that the scientific community has been pushing towards this notion of there is no creator. I've said it before, but Neil deGrasse Tyson said to Charlie Rose said, "Oh, you're a really great reporter." And he's like, "Oh, I guess I am a reporter." You know, scientists are like reporters. We ask the what and the where and the when and the how, but we never ask the who. And he giggled, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Are you going to be that obvious?
I didn't
Are
see
you
that one yet.
serious?"
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
I'll have to find it for you. But it blew my mind to see how obvious it was. And I've seen Bill Nye act like that too on the subject. And it's not about, in my opinion, this is the reason why this long disclaimer is being made. It's not about what creator you choose, in my opinion. Okay, that's me, and that's my opinion on the
Well,
subject. It's just,
that's another subject.
it is.
That's a
And
different subject. See, the only thing that I've established, I've left a couple hints on who that was. However, my whole point was to just establish a creator. It can't be more than one creator, just a creator.
absolutely. And I just want to say that, I mean, your worldview has given you this particular perspective, and this is why you choose to you choose Jesus Christ. That is a world, as you said, it's not a religion, it is a worldview. And I absolutely have sincere respect for you on that. You have very good reasons why that is your choice. And what I appreciate about you, John, is that you are trying to expose scientism for what it is. And it's not that you are trying to maybe convert other people to your particular idea.
No,
You know, we are in a world, yeah,
that's not my job. My job is just to expose the truth. That's my job. That other conversion is,
that's
how should
yeah,
I
that's
say?
up to the individual, because there are
Yeah.
several different ways to get to these conclusions, and most people, it depends on how they were raised, you know, what book they were around growing up, and that's why I think, though, it is just important to recognize that we are a creation that has been created on this creation by a creator.
Right.
To me, this is the biggest revelation that I've had over the past 3 years. I mean, I was an atheist for 8 years. I know I talk about it a lot, but
Yep.
really, I was one of these militant, rational, skeptic atheists. And that's why I'm so dedicated into pointing this stuff out, because I was tricked. I put blinders on. That's essentially the way I felt the entire time. And looking back, absolutely. You have to put blinders on in order to disbelieve, in order to, which you ignore these aspects of quantum mechanics, you ignore these aspects of genetic code and information. You have to, or at least read. What do you see often? What do they redefine terms?
Yeah.
They always say, "Oh, that information doesn't mean that. You're being silly." It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I'm passionate about this, because science has been held back in a large regard, metaphysically. Uh, the scientific culmination of knowledge, I'd probably best to say,
Right.
has been held back in a big way because we've removed the possibility that this might be a creation. Scientists approach this creation to understand it in that way, I think that we would be further down the road in some big ways. But I mean, that's conjecture on my behalf, but I feel that is true. It's the true sciences trying
Right.
to understand what this world is about.
Right.
So
Because yeah, with quantum mechanics and genetics and biochemistry, it's quite over. It's so over so fast that it's kind of ironic. Come to
yeah,
think of it,
yeah, I
it's what people hold on to that actually implodes what they're holding on to, or what they think they're holding on to, as in science.
yeah.
Like it's some entity or something. Um,
Science
it's not.
says.
Yeah, it doesn't have vocal cords. It doesn't have any address. It doesn't have bad breath. It doesn't comb its hair. It's a method. Simple as that. And that's all it is. It's an important
Yeah,
method, but it's merely a method.
and I agree. And so, but the big disclaimer that I want to make today for the show is that I am operating from a very neutral worldview. The axiom of the worldview, though, that I've come to based off of all the information we've gone over, and I've been leaning this way for years, is that we have been created. This is a construct of some kind. Now, you could take that in multiple different ways, and I know that for you define yourself to that worldview of Christianity, and I think that's absolutely, like, there's a path for every single person, and I think that that's perfectly fine. But like I said, we get a lot of people who relate these topics with uh, religion erroneously, which is
Right.
ironic because it's materialism that's the real religion here.
That's correct. That's
so
correct.
so let me
Yep.
just ask you. We'll go into this briefly concerning your worldview. You told me before that information is the strongest reason that you hold to these ideas.
Oh yeah, it's my exhibit A to Z.
Well, if you don't mind, go over that a little bit, because we've avoided talking about our worldviews this entire time, and I think that now's a good time to maybe open up about that.
Well, yeah, like I presented, not only just in the information presentation itself. I mean, that should speak volumes to people. In the atheism presentation, showing where those immaterial things exist. So really, it's you only have two choices, or what they call ontological primitives. There's only two choices. There's only matter itself or consciousness. Those are the only two ontological primitives. So it's real easy, and like I said, genetics and uh, quantum mechanics have showed that the whole game is based on information. Well, information only comes from intelligent agency. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, there's only one creator, just by definition, creator. There's not creators. That's logical seppuku. There's only one creator. So I don't want to say it was easy to figure out which one that was. Um, the funny thing is, I used actual science to figure it out. Parts of it, anyway.
Sure. Looking at the historicity of the text, I would assume, and
That's a different thing. There's a lot of things in Scripture that it's not a science book, but there's a lot of scientific statements that no ignorant goat herder had a flailing chance in the galactic universe of knowing. I
gotcha.
mean, there's a number of them in there, and um, like I said, it's a culmination of a lot of those things. I would probably say there's some physical laws in there also. I would probably say prophecy really hammered it home for me. I was already there, but it really put the
Well, sure, and but this has been a journey. There's no other way to
oh
put it.
yeah, oh sure
Yeah, yeah. So everybody has their path, and I think though, if you start your axioms off right, then that path will take you to wherever the creator needs you to.
well the
Essentially,
first and second laws of thermodynamics are in the first three chapters of Genesis, number one.
uh,
So how did they know that? My
yeah,
first my first question to most people when they ask, because like I said, this is a follow-on discussion to all the presentations we've gave.
sure,
Because like I said, my goal was to just establish a creator. The follow-on discussion is which one. Now that's a pretty deep discussion.
sure.
Um,
And I even saw
and
part of that presentation when you were on Robert Bisano's channel at one time.
oh, that's right. But yeah, he didn't like that all that much.
Not much.
Um, yeah, but
It's contentious, John, and you recognize that's why I respect you as I do, because it's something that modern society has done a very good job, or at least culturally over the past 100 years, to make a person dismiss your claims just by you mentioning the word Bible or Jesus Christ or and I like I said, that's not necessarily my worldview. But I can still see that.
sure.
It was that way for me. The moment somebody talked about the Bible, I'd just tune out.
Oh yeah,
And
or get real angry. Right
which
then you know
happens a
that's a
lot.
tell. Right
It
then you
is.
know it's a tell. Whenever emotion, like like waves of emotion take over,
Yeah,
it's
there's some
almost like
cognitive
bipolar.
dissonance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Whenever that happens, you know that there's more to the story.
yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
deeper rooted issues going on there that sometimes it's hard to get through,
Well, in
even just with
retrospect,
basic
I
stuff.
went through that. That's why I could agree with that statement. I mean, looking back at when those moments happened in my life, a conversation or I'd read something or whatever, it was this aversion that
Sure.
was built in because you have to try very hard to not think this is a creation. You have to
Oh
try
yeah.
really, really hard to not think that we've been created in some way.
We might
And
have
that's
to we might, sorry to interrupt you. We might
what you're
have to
fine.
go down we might have to take a look at functional sequence and specific complexity too. That's a pretty good visual and a pretty good way of thinking about it. We might be able to do that. Let me think about that,
Well, sure, yeah.
and then I'll get back with you.
Yeah, I think as we go along, especially for our regular group of people who are listening, it would be it would logically follow once we, get down the line.
Sure,
So,
sure, sure. I'll bring that up. I'll bring that up. We'll talk about that offline.
so for me, my axioms are, and I said it earlier already, but I feel that I have been created. Actually, I know that the information that you've presented is accurate enough, and it gives me the indicator that I've been created on this creation by a creator. That's what the world appears to me at this point. Now, I'm not a biblical literalist. I'm not a creationist. I'm not all these different titles that people have. I'm not. The only way that I'm a Christian also is that I've accepted Christ within the message of Christ, the forgiveness of Christ. I recognize that He was a historical person that existed at one point, or the idea of him. And I'm in a very neutral position right now. I'm trying to understand the world around me from this very centered, neutral position before I jump on anything and declare that. Personally, I don't like isms and ists and, like, at all. So that's the reason why I take it this way. So I want people who are listening to, especially ones who disagree with this, that I'm not coming from a biblical perspective. And and I would even go so far to say that you, in your presentation of this information, you're not either. It's not that you're with the presentations you've given, you're not trying to prove the Bible or prove or prove Jesus Christ either. This has just been a full presentation of real, actual science that blows materialism out of the water.
Yeah, that
That's the true religion.
there must be a creator.
Yeah,
So,
that's the true
I said,
religion is materialism.
the follow-on question to that's a separate discussion.
Sure, sure. And I'll be more than happy to have, of course, down the road.
Yeah,
So,
it's reconciled pretty simple, pretty easily.
fair enough. Fair enough. But so yeah, to any of the detractors out there, I've seen a couple floating around. These people are choosing not to listen is really what I think has come down to. And
That's their
they have
choice.
this. It is. So they have a particular bias, which makes their cognitive dissonance kick in, and that's the reason why they behave that way usually.
Well, it's called free choice.
Yeah, yeah. And personally, at this point, I feel like if somebody's emotional bias prevents them from learning, a new idea or a different perspective, then they don't deserve the truth of the matter. And I know that sounds harsh, but I mean that's where I've gotten to with this because I've just seen it on this entire realm of conversation where we're questioning the heliocentric model, we're questioning the institutions of science, we're questioning scientism. So many people are stuck in this programmed response way where they get triggered. They get triggered by just asking a simple question. Wait, you don't think like me? What are you doing? These are well established. Our scientists would never lie to us. The institutions would never lie. They're institutions of men. And that's something
Exactly.
that they cannot grasp the level of deception and corruption that men have
Yeah.
encountered over the years.
It comes down to, listen, everyone has a worldview, a presupposition, or their philosophy, like you were talking about before. Everyone has it. We all come into every situation with that. The important question is, however, is what do you have in support of that worldview? Does it stand up to scientific and logical scrutiny? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And then you got to start testing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But people have a filter. They have this programmed filter where they just are going to try to outright deny any possible truth that we might be speaking because it goes against their fundamental, religion. This is the modern scientism. Religion is anchored in materialism mostly, and it's anchored in this authority complex where if we are heretics. I mentioned it earlier, but it's absolutely true. In their mind, by us questioning the tenets of science in their mind, of the scientific community, we are now heretics. And so everything that we may say is going to be filtered inappropriately through their cognitive dissonance and their confirmation bias. And they're just going to say stupid things like, well, I'm seeing a couple in the chat.
Oh, I haven't been looking at the chat.
Oh, yeah, we'll avoid that tonight. No, we've got a lot of great support in there. Actually, a 95%. We just have a fan. Good old shout out to Rhetoric and Discourse. Thank you for the promotion of your 30-minute video where you dishonestly, cut up the video and tried to take it out of context a little bit. I think our presentations speak for themselves. I know that your little friends though will just kind of cheer you on and not really take in the whole of our message. So,
Well, I already dealt with that.
yes, you have. So yeah, I guess I'll give us a cross promotion. Shout out to Rhetoric and Discourse for promoting our channel. I encourage people to disagree with us as long as it's respectful, which
And reasonable.
and reasonable, which he was halfway there on both. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I think we're gonna wind down for the day.
Okay.
What, like I said, next week we'll probably be getting into the cosmology, cognitive, excuse me, the cosmic microwave background. Uh, John here's got some two strong presentations on that, and we're just going to continue to lead and move forward on these subjects. Um, I am writing up a presentation on the cognitive philosophy of all of this, the implications of it, the actual terms, and I'm going to do a similar presentation to what John does, where I'm going to break down what is the what can be concluded based off of all this information. So I'll have that pretty soon. But I'm pretty dug into that, and I want to make sure I make it pretty clear for everybody. So expect that. And do you have anything else to add today, John?
No, that's it, sir.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. Once again, I really appreciate you coming on. This has, in my opinion, been already a great success, and we've gotten a lot of great support. So, yeah, I see this thriving. So, once again, thank you again, and you have a wonderful night, John.
You too, sir.
Oh, and thank you, everybody in the chat. I appreciate all the support. Seriously. Go ahead and share it around, I suppose, and hopefully, yeah, I'm going to make a list of all of them, so we can share the playlist. So, anyways, take care, everybody. Have a wonderful night.